Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I'm really excited to have my next guest with me. Her name is Paula Connor, and she's got all sorts of really cool things to share with us that support our healing process. There are so many new kinds of healing modalities that really work, and I just have gotten to know her a bit, and I'm just like all about what she does. I'll tell you a little bit about it. And then of course I've got questions for her, but Paula completed her business and administration marketing program from Georgian College, as well as I think that's a bachelor's in metaphysical science. So, I mean, she's been in this field for a while, like over 20 years. I want to touch on the bullet points though, because we'll get into all the other stuff of what it is she really focuses on. So Paula has completed certification training in a number of disciplines in order to support her clients' personal growth and well-being. The following are a few of her accreditations: certified life coach from the Life Coach Institute, certified biofeedback technician, Quantum Academies, certified heart math trainer and coach, the Heart Math Institute, stress and well-being assessment provider, the Heart Math Institute, certified spiritual hypnosis practitioner. WellPoint Hypnosis is where I believe that's where she got the certification. Bioacoustic technician with Sound Health, and Reiki level 1 and 2. I mean, what an unbelievable list right there. And I wanted to, thank you so much for joining me today, number one. But this is like amazing to bring all this together. And maybe give us an idea of like how you just kind of pulled all these different things. And also, I have to say, I've tried a bunch of these things in my life, and they're some of the only things that have ever worked, as far as, clearing stuff out of my energy field. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey. I would love to just go into like the childhood and like the whole thing, but I know I'd probably need to have the summarized version. But yeah, I mean, what kind of like lit you up and got you on this path?
Oh my goodness. So I remember back in 2002-ish, I'm thinking that I was introduced to The Secret, and I did a 45-day challenge because I remember back then I would have negative thoughts and I would get angry if my husband wasn't doing what I wanted him to do. And I remember actually it was a moment where I realized that the planet was alive. And it was I was a bit dumbfounded.
Wait,
I'm like,
sorry.
oh my God.
You said alive or a lie?
Alive
Right.
being. She was an alive being, yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness, everything that grows out of this planet is alive. That was kind of like an aha moment. But the big shift for me, I went to, like a long time ago, I did my Reiki level 1. I was taking martial arts. And so I knew about chi and I knew about energy with practicing martial arts and katas and whatnot. But I took my Reiki level 1 so I could understand more about energy. And I would say that I was not awake at that time. I was more curious. I was reading books by Greg Braden, but I thought it was just because I was interested. Excuse me. And when I went and did Reiki level 1, that was the first time I saw an aura. My Reiki master started to talk, and it was like, oh, it was, and the music played and the lights went on, and the colors that were around her were not of this world. They were so vibrant and alive. And after I took the Reiki course 1 and 2, which was like 2 weekends, I started to meditate. And it wasn't, I think it was 3 times. The third time I tried to meditate, so 3 days, I had a Kundalini experience. And everything changes once that happens. I mean, I remember in meditation, it happened. It was like, I would have to say it was kind of like an energetic orgasm from the root all the way up. And I had all these colors inside. It felt incredible. And I remember saying, WTF was that? And then I had to do all this research to try to figure out what that was. My Reiki master, I'd reached out to her to try to figure it out because I had no context. I didn't even know what Kundalini meant or what it was. So I was trying to figure it out. She was actually in Scotland taking a psychic development course, and finally got back to me and she shared, I think you had a Kundalini experience. And that led me into researching what it is and what the chakras are. And that was kind of like the beginning of the awakening process for me.
And how long ago was that?
I think that was around 2004, 5-ish.
Did you find once that activation happened, it remained, and that you were able to like activate it at will, or has it been something you've been working on controlling?
What, the Kundalini?
Well, I guess, I mean, once it's opened, I mean, like once you got the activation, has it remained like that, or do you kind of open it and close it?
I'll answer a different way. Since that happened, what I was seeing, or what was being presented to me, has been a variety of things. As an example, I've experienced flashes in the forest when I'm watching. I've had white light come out of my nose when I was doing mantras or what have you. I had a little blue light in the middle of the night between me and the pillowcase float across me. And, you know, you always check for, is that like a reflection from your crystal or whatever, but there was no lights. I've had that. And then the most profound experience, I would say, which would be a multidimensional experience. It was a Tuesday night. I went to bed. It was about 10 o'clock. My husband was in the living room. My teenager was in bed. It was a school night for him, 14 he was at the time. And I had just gotten a kitten. He was about 11 weeks when I got him, so he'd be 15 weeks-ish now. And so I went to sleep, and then the kitten woke me up. He was on my chest. I opened my eyes, and I had 3 beings beside my bed. And I'm laying there, and they're like, high, high, and then low. And I was just looking at them. I had no fear at all. It was actually really cool. And I was thinking, my husband's in the bedroom, my husband's in the living room, Keegan's in bed. 1, 2, 3, who are you? And they just slowly faded out of view. And I sat up and I was like, wow, that is so cool. Because this is, as I say, back in 2014 or, about there, 2013, 2014-ish. Wow. And I thought that was really cool. And I was curious, like, what did I just experience? And I had already been exposed to Bashar, who you're likely familiar with. And a couple of days later, somebody had shared a link with a interview with him or something to that effect. And one of the participants, audience members, asked a question with respect to that. And Bashar answers, you're starting to perceive multidimensional beings. So things like that happen quite a bit. And the little tapestry that you can see behind me, I picked that up in Peru, because I have been to the Amazon jungle and a different part of Peru on 2 occasions, participating in the sacred plant medicine ayahuasca, which also expands your vision and your perceptive abilities, if that's a fair way to say that.
So you must, with all that, have gone through plenty of sort of dark night journeys, I guess you could say. And so like the dark night of the soul, you mean? Dark journey? Absolutely. And we're kind of facing that on a collective level. So like, what is that like though? You know, when we look at spiritual awakening, how can you help people also understand that shadow side a bit, coming from so much experience?
Yeah, you know, it's different for everyone, which makes it so interesting and unique, because often we like to compare ourselves to other people's experience. And we don't want to do that because they're so unique and so individual. For me, I mean, it's when you become aware of your shadow side or your shit or your behavior. And in that moment it's presented to you, it can be quite astonishing, unfortunate. You're mortified. This is from my own experience.
And that was a big part of it for you. I probably should have asked first rather than assume or anything, but yeah, mortified, keep going. Yeah.
It was just mortified that you finally see your behavior, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I behaved like that. And it can be quite, I'll give you an example. A couple of years, actually only 2 years ago, because this is an ongoing thing, as we unravel the release of, because the dark night of the soul is really where you've denied love of self, where you've denied the light of wisdom and intelligence and consciousness to sort of help you perceive what you're witnessing. And a couple of years ago, we moved into this place that I'm in right now. And got a teenager, and I realized that I really like my environment to be quite beautiful, and I like things the way they are, right? I like them to be set. And I kept going into my son's room and giving him instructions on, how he should organize his room. And it's really none of my business because it's his space. But I remember in the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a control freak. Like I'm overbearing and I'm a control freak. And I remember I went into the closet and I started to cry over my behavior. I finally could see how I was operating. And in the same moment, it was as if I had a presence of a very large, I want to say large being, like a really big sister. And they were this is just the only way I can describe it. Their presence was like, be kind to yourself as you see these things. And that was a real gift, because then I started to trust even more.
And then you began to what? Trust even more yourself, you said?
Trust more, yeah. Because even though I've had all these paranormal experiences, these fantastic experiences where I know I know beyond knowing what is on the other side of this physical experience, I still want more. And that's the ego self, right? And we kind of think that the whole spiritual paranormal phenomena is kind of like Hollywood, right? Like I always thought that my spirit guides would come in and say, hello, Paula, this is your spirit guide speaking, which is so ridiculous because they just whisper, right? It's so subtle. You have to listen, you have to hear.
Yeah. Right. It's not like this big grand entrance or like presentation of now we will finally make, or I don't know if that was the picture you have, but yeah, just something other than the little whispers. Yeah. So what's so interesting is what you've gravitated towards. And I figured you must have had to face some of the dark shadow stuff, on an ancestral level. And even like, when we look at the planet and the imbalance that has been on the planet, were you processing a lot of that stuff too? Like just kind of the imbalance that more in the form of a programming, to keep us kind of conquered and divided. Was that kind of like part of it? Or did you notice that your micro world, you were dealing with enough of it in your own personal world or your ancestral line or your personal relationships that you could see how that could, ripple out to the collective?
I'm not really sure what you're asking me. Sorry, Laura.
Oh, okay. Well, like we have our micro world, our personal stuff, our childhood wounds, but also, the things that we might have been encouraged to, have fun with, our gifts and abilities and talents. So did it kind of hit you like a ton of bricks when you saw, or just feeling into the global energies and the work that you're doing on yourself and the impact that has on the collective, knowing how connected or related the both are?
Well, what I can do is, that's a really big question. So that's a long process to kind of, for those moments, those dark aspects of themselves, they only come up when you're ready to deal, right? Which is a great gift that we can thank the divine for. You only get what you can handle, which is helpful. And there was a lot of things, like I did some journey work well over almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And that was when it came up that I had, when I was only 3 or 4 years old, going back into childhood, I had regular conversations with what I remember as my invisible friend, which I believe was my spirit guide, and had many occasions by my father at the time telling me that it wasn't true, that I was lying. And I even remembered a couple of years ago, I had a reading with a gal who can see energy and whatnot. And she could see, a pointy finger at me and was explaining some of these limitations. When she saw me, she could see this big, huge gauze over my third eye. And we did some digging into that, and I did some meditation into that. And when I was a little girl, when I hid that aspect of myself behind my back, my higher self, it was because I was sharing a story with what I was experiencing with my dad at the time. And he came into the room and basically said, stop lying. You're lying. No, you didn't see that. And I hid that part behind my back. So I struggled with that for a little while, obviously, and that didn't start to come back into my memory until I would say I started to awaken, obviously, because it's a memory forgotten in the past. But my family, you talk about family, my immediate family for years, and probably still now to this day, think I'm a little bit weird, a little way out there, right?
Yay for the weird.
Which I know. And when you become aware, I now understand why I was born into a family where they were not really spiritual at all, because that sort of, I don't want to say rejection, but that on the positive side, that uniqueness that I held, and on the opposite spectrum, weirdness that I held, helped me grow into an adult and not be too attached to the idea that people have to like me, so that you're taken off your path. Because this is, spirituality and your realization of your divinity is a lonely path, because everybody else, it seems, wants you to stay with the tribe, so to speak. And how dare you think that you're different? How dare you, you know what I mean? How dare you walk away from our idea of who you're supposed to be? So you end up living a life where you're not terribly popular, meaning you don't have like an abundance of friends. You have friends for sure and acquaintances, but the usual sort of common things that happen in around, like go to the bar and nightclubs and all that stuff, I'm not interested in, haven't been for like a very long time. Sorry, I don't see you, so it's hard.
No. Well, that's kind of like where I'm like, God, why am I taking her here? And I hope that's okay. Because, I mean, it takes a lot to go on the journey that you did. The tools and modalities that you're connected with are of somebody who is really like willing to look at energy, frequency, DNA, ancestral patterns. I mean, like everything. It just, I mean, just looking at that list, and I'm not even familiar with everything on the list. I mean, I'm vaguely familiar with everything on the list, but more familiar with some of them, but never tried a few. So, to come out of your journey being very different, and to have these journeys that you had with the plant medicine, was that sort of the prerequisite then to getting in touch with these different healing modalities that you work with now? Or like trying to I guess bringing you back to where I kind of like shifted gears to those sort of journeys, and where that might have landed you in like being exposed to these sort of technologies that are in tune with like soul, and they we see mind control, we see social engineering and dark technologies, but these are ones that do the opposite and actually help us to heal. So I mean, you don't have to tell the whole story, but you had those kind of deeper experiences, and then boom, you just kind of ran into all that. Or
well, so the first one was Reiki. That was to understand and expand energy. That was around 2008. 2010, I did the biofeedback quantum energy. Again, it was working with energy in the physical body and the field. That was biofeedback. The acoustics was just last year, as well as the hypnotherapy was last year. And the life coaching was back in 2010. And then the heart math was in 2018. So some of it is more recent, but it's really just a quest and a thirst for just understanding more. I love learning. I wish I could do like the Matrix, where you can just tap yourself into something that's like, I understand the entire crystal realm. But part of the journey is to learn that, right? And to onboard it. But I'm just fascinated by learning. They weren't a prerequisite to the ayahuasca journey. I discovered ayahuasca back in 2010 and wanted to go back then. It wasn't the right time. It didn't come together. And I knew when I did finally go in 2014 that it was not a good idea. I was not ready back in 2010. I still had lots of fear and other things on board, and it would not have been as positive an experience as it was for me. Now, you mentioned something about DNA. I will tell you that on my third ceremony, the first time I did ayahuasca in the Amazon jungle, 8 hours north of Iquitos, we had no running water. We had no electricity. It was a camp. Basically, it took 8 hours by slow boat and fast boat to get there. We were literally in the middle of nowhere. We had a tarantula living in the temple. We had a 15-meter anaconda, 150 meters up, living from our camp. But anyway, in the third ceremony, I was transported into my DNA. And I could see my DNA uncoiling, and I had pictures and numbers and symbols coming out at me. And I could see cells exploding with light. It was incredible. Gosh, the experiences are just, you know, when you look at the 3D reality, it's like, there's so much more in the inner world and interdimensions and consciously to learn and expand. It's so exciting and so interesting, and way more interesting than, you know, what's on the telly.
Right. And what stage was that at, like, as far as your personal life? Were you like already showing, like, I mean, people knew that you were kind of going off on this other direction? This was something maybe you couldn't necessarily report back about? You had to be kind of careful about what you shared, or like what was going on personally around that?
No, well, personally, my husband was not impressed at all, and we were almost not going to be married, actually, so that's interesting. There was a moment in time there where it was like, okay, if you go, I'm breaking up with you. And I'm like, well, I'm going, so I guess we're broken up. I had a little bit more of a dig my heels in, I'm doing this, and I don't care what you say kind of attitude. And then when I came back, no, I was quite happy to share it. I mean, I worked for a global video conferencing company at the time, and the way the CEO reported it would be like I hung out in the trees, because they just didn't understand, right? So I wasn't afraid to share, only with folks, as I say, that were interested. When you first awaken consciously, you want to share everything that you've learned, but that's kind of like vomiting on everybody's feet. They're not interested in hearing. So it's you very quickly learn not to share unless someone opens the door for you. Or as they say in that incredible book, The Way of the Essenes, we must turn the page of Revelation one at a time, so that people aren't frightened by what you encounter and think that you're so out there that you know you're worthy of being afraid of, and we don't want that.
And this is just totally like what I want to capture for our time together. And I think what brought us together for this, here we are with the coronavirus. You've been on this, you know, huge path of awakening. And I know, you know, obviously you have to navigate your own personal world, but you have tools and you have experience that are not your everyday thing to run into. And in a way, do you see a similarity between some of your journeys of awakening and what is possible for humanity as they're being kind of pulled into this quarantine? Do you see sort of a correlation with something that you can really relate to?
Well, what I would
even
say,
if it's not personal, that these are the tools that you're working with to, you know, help with like fear, right? And trauma and ancestral patterns. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So what I would say about, well, that there's a lot there. So first thing I want to say is fear is a liar. And I'm going to say that a second time. Fear is a liar. And I would encourage everybody that is listening to write that down. And I would also encourage them to take out a little Post-it note like this big, if you can see this picture, that little Post-it. And I would encourage them to write on that, I have no need for fear, and to keep that on their being for at least 2 weeks. So they're constantly reminded, I have no need for fear. So one of the gifts that I have is clear knowing, clear cognizance. And what I know to be true, and this may be controversial, and this is just my perception. I'm not saying that this is the only truth. This is what my intuition guides me, and I encourage everybody to listen to their own. But for me, there is no pandemic. This is a propaganda exercise to encourage humanity to drop into fear, because fear is far more powerful than any flu bug could be. That's the first thing I want to say about it. The second thing I want to say about it is our immune system, like human beings, are one with Mother Earth. We're made of the same stuff. It's like we are a cell on her body. And this coronavirus, again, in my own knowing, was created in a lab. So it's not organic. And it's not part of the divine plan. The divine plan is that humanity has decided at a higher level that they will no longer agree to lies and that we wish to move forward. So this is not part of the divine plan for a pandemic to come in and take out a whole bunch of human beings. Now, granted, there is a virus, but I do not believe for 1 second there was a pandemic, because at the same time when that was released, we are in this very potent energy that is encouraging people to wake up. We have the particles of light, the photons, the adamantine particles, the crystalline, the light that's helping push the shadows that we have suppressed in our bodies to the surface for us to look at. So it's like a counter thing. If we have the population in fear, then they can't really ascend or wake up. Now, you'd asked about, or you'd made a comment about my journey in waking up. I had the luxury, as well as many other people, to wake up over 10, 15 years. That is not how it's going to work now. What I'm advised of is that this is a metaphor, you will either be kissed on the forehead by the Father to wake up, metaphor, or you will be tossed from your beds. Nobody gets to stay asleep anymore. And I think what happened, or what it feels to me when I feel into this coronavirus, it has caused fear. There are a lot of folks that have dropped into fear, which is unfortunate. But what it's done instead is make people awaken even further, to start questioning, wait a minute, if we're one with Earth, and we have this incredible immune system, it's kind of like the 100 monkey effect. Before that virus is even launched, we have access to the antidote because we're one with Earth and it's inorganic. It's kind of like the 100 monkey effect. Or said another way, when we're going to invent things that will make a quantum leap in our advancement, if you recall in the history, there are multiple people that get close to that revelation or that invention at the same time, right? Like it's within a very short period of time. That's the 100 monkey effect. So as soon as one person on the planet, their immune system has created the antidote to whatever virus, whatever pathogen, the 100 monkey effect, it's downloadable for all of us because we share one conscious mind. As soon as we upload a thought or what have you, you see what I mean? All of a sudden, it proliferates across all of the population.
Yeah, it's like a part of like this larger library. I know there's like Akashic Records, but it's like it's a part of the greater resources of where we kind of unify and share our, just share our uniqueness. And it's not separate. I mean, it's a gift to the collective. We don't have to be the hoarders. I mean, I understand people with their toilet paper and whatever, but
even some of those images were manufactured.
Yeah.
They're not even real. Because the toilet paper, the digestive system isn't even touched by this virus, right? It's not even a side effect of it.
Right. Well, yeah, or just, prepping just in case, But yeah. Why out of all things would it be that? Exactly.
Toilet paper.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Some of those images were manufactured to create the idea of that. And again, it's so I'll share something with you, Laura. A couple of years, I think it was in 2017, I had a dream where, and this is totally going off on a different tangent, so I hope you're happy to come with me on this little path.
We might come back. If we don't, I'm glad. I'm grateful. Go ahead.
I just had a dream that Trump signed a new peace treaty with our extraterrestrial family. I just had a dream. I woke up and it was around the same time that I think Magenta had some knowing about him moving papers and doing something in integrity. He was doing business in integrity or what have you. But I feel like we are so guided, we are so supported, and that anything that is done that will affect the divine plan, where we can all, it's just basically time for us to grow up. It's time for us to evolve. That anything that they try backfires. And it feels to me like they're in total checkmate. The powers that are in checkmate.
As a humanity, I agree. Keep going. Yeah. Checkmate.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that more and more people are looking at the world going, okay, this does not make sense. Nobody wants war. And I don't know if you, but I don't know anybody that's come down with this coronavirus. I don't know a single soul. at all. I don't know anybody.
No,
I don't know
I've
if you
only
know
known
anybody.
people with symptoms. They got tested and everything's fine. I mean, this is the season too. And, you know, there's so much that we feed into something, you know, and that's how propaganda works. That's how social engineering works. So exactly, you know, and it's good that that's, you know, what you know, firmly stand by is that this is propaganda. This is something that is more a mind virus. It infects the mind infects the creative channels. And then we, you know, are fueling the fire, so to speak. And then we're kind of caught in the flames. Is that something?
Yeah, because
fear.
Yeah, fear cauterizes your connection. So if you work with guides or your spiritual team or whatnot, and you drop into fear, it's like it cuts off your connection. It cauterizes that connection, because the divine, it just doesn't operate at that level of vibration, right? It's down in the muck, so to speak. Although the divine is there too, because there's nothing outside of the divine, but
right.
It doesn't. Yeah.
But do you see like humanity like at a stage where it's time to move on from maybe moving back and living on your parents' couch, or overstaying, you know, living at home for too long? It's almost like something is trying to set us free, but it's scary as hell. And people are holding on for dear life to the old paradigm because they don't know what personal sovereignty even looks like.
Well, I think what this coronavirus has done is it has caught the attention of everybody, which is a good thing. And we are now in uncertainty. So we were, as a collective, we all believed it was the same thing, right? Every Monday morning, we got up for work, we went to work, we did the Monday to Friday thing, lived for the weekend. It was the same thing, day in and day out. Now we're in uncertainty, very much uncertainty. And that is because we are now about to experience a new way of being, because the way I understand it is that we are transitioning from one octave of reality, one frequency of vibration, to a higher frequency of vibration where we agree to the truth, where we don't agree to lies anymore. And I feel, when I feel into this, that we are about to make an absolute quantum leap into this new way of being. And it might take a couple of generations for it to really anchor in. We're planting all the seeds now and have been since 2012 and probably before that. But I feel that this is showing, humanity about uncertainty. It's showing the importance of hygiene, not only our hands, right, keeping ourselves clean, but also mental hygiene, the quality of your thoughts, how clean they are, right? And I think it's also introducing the idea of the environment. If we can't be in the same place together, now we're even like, what are we doing? Okay, there's a virus going around. We have to be social distancing. It's bringing to the forefront.
Sorry, keep going. Yeah. You're making me
think. I was just saying.
I don't want to cut you off. Go.
Yeah. No, it's bringing into the awareness too about how we're treating the environment. And I think that is fueling the awakening even further, which is a beautiful thing.